Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on mysterious and weird true stories, from glitches to the paranormal. This is my weekly compendium for the week ending Monday, September 20th, 2021. Case file number 287, written by Show Me Your Kitties, Magic Eyeglass Repair Fairies. Last Monday was my birthday. That's what started this weird and unexplainable event. I didn't really want to do much besides hang out with my boyfriend and chill around the house. My uncle asked me to run errands for him and take some stuff to Goodwill. I was annoyed because it was my birthday, but I agreed to it anyways. A little backstory. I tend to wear funky glasses and take pride in the dorkiest ones I can find. There's a specific pair I wear more often than most, and they're my favorite. They look like they came straight out of your typical 80s school picture, off the face of some nerdy kid. I get tons of compliments on them though. The lenses are a ginormous butterfly-looking lens. I just like that they cover all points of my vision. That's mostly why I wear them all the time. As I was putting my clothes into the trash bags to take to Goodwill, I went to do that typical swing the trash bag over your head and use the force of wind to open it method. As I was coming down with the trash bag, it caught the top of my glasses, causing them to fly off my face and slam face down onto the concrete floor in our garage. I knew before looking at them that they were going to be busted in some type of way, judging by how hard they fell. I just stood there and kind of looked at them for a second, anticipating how bad the damage was going to be. When I picked them up, the left lens had a deep chip gouged out of it. Not just a crack, a chip, maybe a few millimeters in length. Completely unmistakable. I ran my fingernail in the chip and was able to feel it perfectly. I was highly annoyed at this point, mostly with myself for agreeing to run errands on my birthday, but also because I did one of my typical clumsy klutz moves to break my glasses. I looked at my boyfriend and was like, fuck, my favorite glasses just broke, and handed them over for him to look at. He confirmed there was a chip in them too. I basically just said, whatever, and continued stuffing clothes into trash bags, trying not to be upset. I put them back on my face before hopping into the driver's seat. As we were on our way to Goodwill, I got annoyed again because I noticed the chip was placed perfectly enough to where it wasn't necessarily obstructing my view, but it was in my view enough that I could see it and it was bugging me. I also couldn't stop touching it. I took them off and handed them to my boyfriend. He examined the chip again for a second time and said, I don't know. Maybe they're repairable. Maybe you could order another pair. I sighed and told him it really wasn't a big deal. I decided I wasn't going to worry about going through a repair. I had more glasses at home to get me by, and had an eye appointment coming up in a month or so anyways, and agreed that I just order the same pair again. He also agreed that was the best move, as the cost of a repair just didn't make the most sense. The whole time we were running errands and going to my birthday dinner, I continued to touch the chip. I don't really know why other than it was bugging me all night. When we got home, I put them on my nightstand next to my bed and just left them there, not really sure what to do with them yet. My boyfriend works overnight in a hospital and usually sleeps at my place when he gets off his shift. This tidbit is a little important. When I was getting ready for work a couple of mornings later, he was getting off his shift. We were making small talk and I was just like, man, I wish my favorite glasses weren't broken. I don't want to wear my other pairs today, so I guess I'll just wear my contacts. I went and picked up the glasses to just confirm to myself that they were still broken, I guess. The chip in the glasses was still definitely there. I again was able to run my fingers across the chip and was able to feel it. I put them back down on my nightstand, and that's where they've been for the last week, until today. I got home from work earlier and decided I wanted to clean my bedroom. My boyfriend has been working, so there's been no one here but me. I noticed my glasses sitting where I had last left them on my nightstand and was debating with myself on whether or not I wanted to throw them away. I obviously wasn't going to wear them again because of the chip, but also they were my favorite glasses and I didn't want to part with them just yet for some reason. This is where the crazy part happens. I go to pick up my glasses and put them on to wear one last time, but for some reason, I'm not seeing the chip in my line of sight like I was before. I didn't think too much of it until I took them back off and looked at the lens. My jaw drops. The chip is gone. The gigantic, fucking noticeable and very obvious chip that I felt so many times is just gone. I run my finger across both lenses because maybe, just maybe, I was mistaken and it was actually the right lens instead of the left. Am I crazy? I clean them hoping to find something. Nope. Literally nothing. Absolutely nothing. I put them back on my face, take them off, feel for chips, put them back on over and over, not even a scratch anywhere. Cold chills creep up my spine and my body is covered in goosebumps. I immediately feel like I'm dreaming and this moment isn't real, or that when I slam them on the floor, that didn't even happen and that my mind is somehow playing a trick. I get up and walk around my house to see if anything else is out of the ordinary. I even look at the glasses again just to make sure it's the same pair, but I know they are because it's my favorite pair. The thought even crossed my mind that maybe my boyfriend wanted to surprise me and get them fixed. But there's no way. He's been working 12-hour overnight shifts and sleeping, so there couldn't have been any time for that in his schedule. I texted my boyfriend what happened and sent him a picture of the glasses. I still feel like I'm crazy at this point and wanted confirmation that I'm not because nothing like this has ever happened to me. I've heard of unexplainable stories like this that have happened to other people, but not any that have happened to me. He's just as shocked as I am when we have no clue how they're suddenly just fine. He joked that all of the oil from my fingers filled the chip because I wouldn't stop touching it. My theory is that a magic eyeglass repair fairy knew that I was sad about my broken glasses, so they appeared in my room and fixed them while I was asleep. Thanks, fairy. I am still blown away, but I'm wearing them on my face as I type this now. Case notes. So I just want to say that I confirm your theory. This was definitely magic eyeglass repair fairies. I mean, we have tooth fairies, right? We have Santa Claus. So why not something for eyeglasses? Come on, people, it just makes sense. If you're enjoying this video, consider giving it a like. Now on to the next story. Case file number 288, written by Pryan Shu 0. Afternoon tea with a disappearing biscuit on the side. Usual morning. I had a nice stretch and sat down for my tea to enjoy the warm, sweet delight with a plate of biscuits to dip in. On unfortunate times, the biscuit breaks and you send another biscuit for the rescue. Foreshadowing. I picked up a biscuit, didn't quite dip it yet, and accidentally I dropped it in. From my experience, running to get a spoon is more suitable than using another biscuit to lift the drowned biscuit out. The latter leaves a mess of biscuit residue at the bottom. Anyways, I ran to the kitchen, picked up a spoon, and ran back to save my biscuit. It hardly took me 5 seconds. While I'm exploring the tea with the spoon to lift the fallen biscuit from its demise, I feel nothing. Strange. Now I'm curious. I had a plate right next to me on which I had more biscuits. I emptied the plate, poured my tea into it, and again I saw nothing. No traces of biscuit at all. What shocked me the most was the non-existence of any residue at the bottom of the teacup. I took a sip only to find no taste of the biscuit. My mom was right beside me on the couch. She freaked out too. Some might argue that it somehow got dissolved in it, but trust me, I've had that biscuit drop in my tea before. Today's experience was different. It takes a lot of time for it to dissolve, and still then it leaves some residue at the bottom. This just disappeared in a matter of seconds. Written by Anonymous, a cool draft from the Afterlife. I have never believed in the paranormal, and even to this day, I'm not sure if I believe in the events of this story. It has been stuck in the back of my mind for years, and I thought I would share it with you guys. A bit of backstory. My father served in the Royal Military Police and left the army 4 years ago, after 30 years of service. We are from the UK. My father has always been a very serious man, worked very hard, and the little humor he has is very dry. He has traveled the world with his work and experienced all manner of life. He is the last person to believe in the paranormal. So just over 10 years ago, he was on a posting in Germany, the last of the British troops before all the bases were closed. He had moved into a big old house. This house was where Hermann Goering, head of the German Luftwaffe, lived. My father lived there with 3 other high-ranking officers from different regiments, all of which mostly kept to themselves. After 4 months, he happened to have a weekend alone in the house. In the evening, he was sitting downstairs watching TV, when he heard footsteps coming down the stairs and into the hallway. He thought nothing of it until the fourth time he had heard someone come down the stairs. He assumed one of his housemates had returned from leave early. He had gone to look, but there was nothing there, and after checking the rest of the house, he went to bed. The following 2 nights, the same thing happened, but my father put the noise down to it being an old house with creaky floors. Monday morning, he reported the noise, along with a draft in the bathroom and a leaky tap, to the site maintenance office. His housemates had returned, and he had forgotten all about it. A couple of weeks later, he happened to mention the noises he heard to the old German cleaner. She said, in the most matter-of-fact way, that was Cedric. It turns out that Cedric was a Polish prisoner of war who used to work in the house. Cedric was sadly beaten to death in the house, and it is believed his spirit has remained in the house ever since. The cleaner told my father that Cedric walks the stairs every night and makes occasional noises or gusts of wind during the day. My father told us occasionally about the noises, etc. That could have been Cedric, but none of us believed him. He learnt the ways of Cedric, but there was never any flair or imagination to his stories. Just simply, there is a ghost that wanders around my house. 6 months later, I went to Germany for a work experience placement near where my father was based. He picked me up from the airport and took me to the house where he lived. I stayed the night there, and there was no sign or mention of this so-called Cedric. In the morning, I was going for a shower when my father said, "Don't worry about the wind. It's just Cedric, but he means no harm." I thought he was winding me up, but I still put a towel under the door to avoid any drafts. I had just about finished my shower, about to tell my father his made-up ghost doesn't exist, when this breeze/gust of wind/whatever it was blew right through me. It was like nothing I had experienced or known since then. It left me cold for the rest of the day. I grabbed my towel and raced out into the bedroom. I got changed, packed my bags, and walked out of that house. I believe it to be the only paranormal thing I have ever experienced. Thinking back, I cannot see how that could have been a draft or my father winding me up. I don't know what it was, but I do know there was definitely a presence in that house. Case file number 289, written by Yay Me, I'm a She. Their daughter presents a ring that was lost. It's been 10 plus years, and we still haven't figured this one out. We do tell this story constantly, and no one has ever come up with a plausible solution. Right after we got married in June 2010, my husband wore his wedding ring to work. At the time, he was working in a big box store's distribution center about 35 miles from our home, working the night shift. He's had a week to get used to wearing it, and he didn't have any issues at work that day with the ring getting in the way. We worried about that. I was afraid he'd lose or break it. At the end of the shift, he went to the bathroom to wash all the black off his hands. He took the ring off, scrubbed it, set it on the right side of the sink, and washed his hands. While doing so, a friend came in and washed his hands on the left side and congratulated him on his wedding, etc., and they walked out together, leaving the ring on the edge of the sink. On the way home, he had his hand out the window, tapping his hand on the side of the car to the music when he realized there was no clinking. He pulled over and checked his key clip, his pockets, socks, and shoes. At the time, he basically wore t-shirts and gym shorts to work every day, so there was a little chance he could miss it anywhere. He called back to work and they checked the restroom to no avail. It was gone. When he got home that night, we checked everything again. He said he remembered setting it down but knew he hadn't picked it up. We made flyers and word was spread throughout the warehouse, but there was nothing about the ring. It never turned up. We checked the pawn shops around town. Nothing. It's simply gone. A year and a half later, our 3-year-old daughter was playing in a spare bedroom, and she came out chatting away and waving her finger at us. Around her finger was my husband's wedding ring. We have no idea how it got home. When she showed us where she found the ring, it was on the floor in the back of the closet, under the boxes. This was a winter coats closet too, nothing that would have had any interaction with him or the ring. It was June when he lost it, so he wasn't wearing a jacket. He worked in a t-shirt and gym shorts with socks and sneakers. He thought perhaps I had another one made and was trying to be slick, but then he noticed there was a gash in the Celtic knot pattern that he hadn't told me about, so it had to be the real thing. Case notes File number 289. So now we're back in my wheelhouse. Disappearing items reappearing. But this one is special because it moved distance. I found that whenever objects disappear, even people, they're still bound by the gravity of the planet. Otherwise they would re-emerge in nothingness. Or maybe actually, sometimes they're not bound. That's why some objects come back and others don't. Maybe they do physically reappear in the universe, but they weren't bound by the planet's gravity during that time that they were out of phase, and then they just reappear in nothingness, where the planet was. But why are some bound by gravity? And in this case, how would it move such a great distance from work to home, which I'm assuming is like 10 miles or more? That's quite the commute for a ring. Case file number 290, written by Comic Book Guy, 87. From Red to Blue, a charging mystery. My phone charger died Saturday evening, so I went to the gas station and bought a cheap red cable charger. Red is my favorite color. I got back home and plugged it in the kitchen to charge my phone. While it was charging, I took a shower, then passed out on my couch watching Tombstone. I woke up around 3 a.m. to use the restroom before going back to bed. After using the restroom, I went to grab my phone to see if it got any texts after using the restroom, and as I was checking my phone, I noticed that the cord on my charger was blue. I turned on the kitchen lights to make sure my eyes weren't playing tricks on me because it was dark in my apartment, but it was actually blue. I know for a fact when I bought it that it was red because I remember thinking, oh cool, they have a red charger, and grabbing it. I spent all day today thinking about it in the back of my head, but I can't think of anything else. If you're wondering what the old charger color is, the one that died, it was a plain white one. Case file number 291, written by Eastern Cellist 166, a hidden fort that couldn't exist. I live in a town with several 19th century era buildings, including a few Napoleonic forts, 4 known ones. They are well known to urban explorers and have thoroughly been explored and mapped, including one with several tunnels. When I was 16, me and my friends decided it would be a fun day out to go there. We had done this many times and knew the fort by heart, including all exits and entry points that had not been closed up by the council yet. We went in as usual, and all seemed to be normal. We climbed around and had some fun before moving on to the tunnels. We decided to go through the most popular tunnel there, as it was easiest to navigate and one of my friends was a bit claustrophobic. We had gone through this tunnel several times before, and so did many others, so it is very well mapped and usually opens up to just a big empty room with windows looking into the center of the fort. This tunnel does fork off in 2 directions, but both lead to similar rooms. However, this time, for some reason, after taking a left at the fork like we usually did, as the room on that side was in a less decayed state, the tunnel opened up to something that to this day, me and my friends cannot explain nor replicate. We entered what at first seemed to be the usual room, but we quickly noticed that it was in a near perfect state. No graffiti, no vandalism, no empty beer cans, or a charred floor from a campfire. There was nothing unusual. It was like the place hadn't been touched since it was converted into a hospital in World War II. We were very confused, but decided to look around. We quickly noticed that it was a completely different fort. We all thought that we had stumbled our way in and that it had somehow gone unnoticed by urban explorers that were in the area before, and we had found it by pure accident. With little hope, I tried looking up the coordinates, but unfortunately, as was often the case in these areas, due to these forts essentially being buried, I couldn't get any GPS signal, which did not surprise me. We explored and speculated on the position of the untouched fort for the rest of the day, thinking we had scored gold, having found yourself the dream hideout or hangout area. The tunnel was roughly 1 kilometer long, so we knew it couldn't be too far from the known location. After a great day of exploring this urban explorer's wet dream, we packed up and left without any problems. We went back through the tunnel and popped out on the other end in the expected place. This is where it struck us. We took great care in noting our way back through the tunnel in order to find the fort again on our next visit. The route we took was the same as we always did. We had not accidentally deviated or anything. This was the exact same route we usually took. Me and a mate decided to quickly run back to it just to make sure. We arrived at the opening and, as usual, the tunnel opened up to the room we had earlier expected. Since then, my friends have tried numerous times to find the fort again. Unfortunately, I cannot take part in the search, at the moment at least, for personal reasons. I have, however, tried to find signs of it on Google Earth, but unlike its supposed neighboring fort, it does not appear there at all. All research I have done related to this does not seem to indicate the existence of this fifth fort that we saw. To this day, that fort remains some sort of glitch in the Matrix. I'm not posting this here for it to be solved, but I just think it's an interesting and mysterious event. Case file number 292, written by Ginny McJuicy. Friend who died was reanimated. I was pretty close friends with this boy in middle and high school, and we lost touch after graduation. He joined the military. In my early 20s, I called his home phone number at his parents' house, just on a whim, and spoke with his brother, who told me that his friend had a brain tumor and was honorably discharged, and then sadly died. For my 20-year high school reunion a few years back, someone set up a Facebook page for the event and included a bunch of old photos. One of them had a shot of my friend and I commented on how sad it was that he died so young. Another classmate commented that he was alive and well and linked his Facebook page. I clearly remembered the conversation with his brother and frequently, over the years, had moments of sadness over his passing. I sent a friend request that he didn't accept, and we have yet to speak. While it might be easy to assume that this guy just hates me, that's really unlikely. We never had any sort of drama or anything, and I spoke with his brother on the fly, as this was well before social media. Unless his brother had some standing order like, if this girl I was friends with in high school randomly calls the house for no reason, tell her I died. It's just weird as hell. Case notes. So my thought on this is there's a few possibilities. Of the more mundane is, as you say, he just decided he didn't really want to talk to you anymore and thus faked his death in a sense. It's not entirely likely, but it's not impossible either. The other option is maybe in the military or after he was discharged, he saw some sort of crime and now he's in WITSEC. And then in the realm of the unusual, maybe it's a doppelganger just posing as him. Case file number 293, written by Blood Lichter. The only good thing about a mystery wolf spider is when it vanishes. So I just finished doing all my dishes, a full sink's worth and a decent amount on the counter besides it, to give an idea for context. Just after I'd finished everything in the sink and was getting ready to move everything on the counter into the sink, I noticed unusual movement in the now empty sink. I turned to look and there it was, this massive wolf spider sitting over the sink. It was longer from tip to tip than my middle finger, so over 3 centimeters long. Unusually large for where I live and where it was found. It was just sitting there, over the sink, on a decent-sized web, neither of which was there a few moments before. I just stood there, staring at it in disbelief, trying to understand what was happening. 1 minute I was doing dishes in this very sink, and now there's a huge spider with a web covering it. After a few moments of this, I decided to try and take a picture of it, so I turned to grab my phone off the counter. When I turned back, the spider and web were gone, leaving me just as bewildered as before, and now disappointed. I decided to just finish the dishes as if nothing had happened and post this story after. I tried to rationalize the situation in a few different ways, but none of them make sense. The web was too complex to have been made in such a little time. The web couldn't have been there earlier, otherwise it would have been destroyed when I started doing the dishes. I didn't see the spider anywhere earlier, and I would have easily, given its size and lack of hiding places near my sink, even with the dishes. There also wasn't any webbing left when it disappeared, so it wasn't destroyed somehow. It just appeared, then disappeared. Not the weirdest glitch I've experienced, but definitely a notable one for me. Case notes. Okay, so let's be honest here. This is the only positive, appearing and disappearing object phenomena glitch that I can recount. I am very happy for you that while the spider did appear, it also vanished a few moments later. Let's just hope it never comes back, especially on your bed. Case file number 294, written by Mao, a voice with no source. This literally just happened to me and my mom, and we are still shaken up and thoroughly freaked out. It's about 7 a.m. here. I woke up to use the bathroom and was gonna browse Reddit in bed before going back to sleep. My mom started to shower and get her makeup done before work, when literally out of nowhere, I heard a huge, echoing beep, like the dial tone when you're calling someone before they pick up. It sounded like it was coming from outside, and it was so loud I got scared it was a tornado or flood warning from outside, and went to check my mom's phone for any warning because mine wasn't doing anything. When I got up though, someone answered on the other end, and it was my dad. He said, "Hello, baby." It was 100% his voice. It had the same cadence and tone as his, and he sounded excited to hear from me. For reference, my parents are separated, and my dad now lives an hour and a half away. I don't get to see him a lot, especially with my chronic health problems, and so it sounded exactly like a phone call I would make to him to catch up. But it was coming from outside, not inside the house, and loud enough so it was like someone was playing the call over a microphone. Then it just stopped, cut short all of a sudden, like someone's hung up on the call. I was thoroughly startled and went to ask my mom if she'd heard it too, and she had. She was in the bathroom getting ready, just down the hall from my room, so she thought that I had just been calling him for some reason, but was wondering why it was so loud. I checked mine and her phone calls history just to make sure, but neither of us called him. I called him just now to ask if he had somehow called one of us, but he had been asleep and I had woken him up. This is the weirdest, most glitchy thing I've ever experienced. I would assume it was straight up hallucination if my mom had not heard it too. Heard him say, "Hello, baby," and recognized his voice. The weirdest thing for me is that this was just it. It abruptly stopped and then nothing else. At least I'm lucky I didn't hear my voice. I'm going to try to go back to sleep. I honestly don't think I could mentally handle that weirdness if I heard myself talking to him. Case file number 295, written by OK Penalty 3654. A big something on his bed, but nothing was there. One day I was playing Warzone, 6 months ago. I was on a losing streak, so I decided to stop playing and go to sleep, since it was already pretty late. Before I continue the story, I would like to mention that my room was clean and my bed was made. I crawled under my sheets, laying on my stomach, and began to stretch my legs out towards the edge of my bed. However, something big and heavy prevented my feet from stretching out fully. It was probably beach ball sized and incredibly heavy. This was judging by the way it felt against my feet. When I realized that there should be nothing at the foot of my bed, I heard a loud thud that shook the apartment and rattled the glass window next to me. The thud was the equivalent to a huge TV or piano being dropped. I immediately got up and looked around to see if something fell. There was literally nothing there. I looked around for 10 to 15 minutes, then went to sleep. I also checked in the morning and there was also nothing that seemed out of the ordinary. I literally have no idea what it could have been. I was not asleep or dreaming, by the way, because I was in the process of getting in bed. Bonus file, written by Daldems. Spirits pranking, or do they just want conversation? Hi guys, I thought it was time to share my story. I would love any thoughts on what it could be. It all began when I was about 7 years old. When I was a young girl, I was playing with my friend in my house one afternoon. We were downstairs when I heard my sister calling my name from the upstairs bathroom. This struck me as strange as I didn't think she was home. My friend also heard it, so we made our way upstairs. The voice continued to call us until we were at the top of the stairs, which is when I realized the bathroom light was off and there was clearly no one in there. We were confused and looked around, convinced she was hiding. My sister came home hours later as she had been out with her friend that day. I couldn't understand what had happened, and neither could my friend. We still talk about it to this day. Nearly 20 years later, with nothing happening until 2015. In 2015, my partner and I moved into a new house to rent. It was an older house, but was decently priced and had great potential. As we couldn't afford the rent on our own, we had to advertise for a few flatmates, and before we knew it, we had filled the house with a decent group of people. My partner and I shared the ensuite bedroom, which was located on the top floor of the house. One day, I was in the bathroom doing my makeup. I had left the bathroom door ajar, which led into our room, but I had our bedroom door shut as I enjoyed the quiet. Suddenly, I heard our closet door in the bedroom open and a few loud footsteps against the carpet behind the open door. I figured this was my partner, who must have snuck into our room without me hearing the bedroom door open. "Hi," I called out, still focusing on myself in the mirror. His voice immediately replied, "Hi." I remember smiling and asking, "What are you doing?" To which he replied, "Nothing." For some reason, the way he said it made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I can still hear the exact tone in my head. The only way I can describe it is he was being playful or mischievous, as if he was hiding something, perhaps the way a child would answer if they were up to no good. I called back out, "No, seriously, what are you doing?" And to that, the responses stopped. My question was met with silence. When I turned around and opened the bathroom door, I realized no one had been in the room. The bedroom door was still closed, but the most peculiar perhaps is that the closet door was wide open, something I didn't do, and I know it was closed before I went into the bathroom. This startled me to my core, and I remember feeling almost sick as I spook easily. I rushed downstairs and found my partner outside, on the front lawn with our flatmate. I asked him if he was just upstairs, but they both told me they had been sitting there the whole time, and were genuinely confused at my panic. My partner doesn't believe in ghosts and instantly brushed aside my story and tried to calm me down. A couple of months later, our other flatmate Matt was home alone one day, making himself a cup of tea in the kitchen. He had the tea in one hand and his cell phone in the other, and was walking to the lounge when he said he heard my voice. I'm Canadian and have a distinct accent in our house, whispering, "Hi, Matt," right behind him. He was so startled he dropped his tea and his phone onto the ground and turned around to find no one. He swore that it was my exact voice and even said he spent a good 20 minutes trying to find me in the house after thinking it must be a prank. It was enough to scare him out of the house for the rest of the day, and when he spoke about our similar experiences, we knew there must be something more to it. Other than this, we had other weird encounters like our doors locking us out of the house, TV turning on with full volume in the middle of the night, items going missing and reappearing and then repeating. The usual ghost things. I no longer live in that house, but I think about that encounter sometimes and it still scares me. To this day, I wonder if these occurrences are connected or just a coincidence. I find it interesting why a spirit would mimic people. I've heard speaking to spirits gives them energy, and I wonder if this is a method as they think you're more likely to reply, if it's someone you know. I wonder if you have any thoughts on this. Case file number 296, written by Kill You a Zodiac, a tiny thing with a lot of force. I was going to school at 5 a.m. as usual, but when I reached the last step in my house there, I saw something dark hitting my shoulder with a lot of force, but I couldn't see well because the lights were off. I saw this thing going to the door and sneaking through the tiny gap in the door. Probably not even a cockroach would pass through it. What bothers me the most is that while it was trying to get out, it seemed to be pulled by something. It didn't feel like it was moving normally. The strangest part of it all was that this thing hit me really hard, so it shouldn't be small, but it ran away through a tiny hole. After that, I opened the door and turned on my cell phone flashlight with 2 quick presses of the power button, but there was nothing in the garage. My father was right behind me. He confirmed he heard a loud noise, but he saw nothing. Written by Lord Cheesecake 08. Behind this tree is a portal to the unknown. Last night, me and my dad were out on our porch, and I was going out every once in a while to ride my skateboard around, whenever I wanted to. I ended up going back up to my porch to sit down and chat with my dad. We didn't talk about anything important, but not long after, we heard a group of kids walking around. About 30 seconds later, they emerged from behind our neighbor's house. They were still on the sidewalk though. They walked on the sidewalk, then turned and went onto the sidewalk my house was on. They asked us if we had seen a pit bull, but we hadn't seen the dog at all, so we just simply said no. They continued down the sidewalk and ended up getting close to the corner of the sidewalk. The corner of the sidewalk was blocked by a tree. I watched as the group had all been covered by the tree. I waited about 10 seconds later, and they had not left the corner. My attention to the tree was cut short as I had heard the footsteps of 2 boys walking. They seemed to be following the trail of the other group. They got to the end of the sidewalk and walked behind the same tree. Sure enough, They hadn't come out from behind the tree either. I grabbed my skateboard and rode to the other end of the road to get a look at the corner of the road. I quickly went back up to my porch and asked my dad if he had seen the same thing too. He quickly said yes, mid-conversation. I ran back down and followed the sidewalk on the other side of the road to see if they were still there, but they were gone. They took steps behind a tree and just vanished. Case file number 298, written by Please Help Mel, a proper Spanish glitch. So I've had my fair share of weird stuff follow me around. What I'm going to describe might be related. It might not. I'm not sure. Can anyone shed any light? So we all know that scam calls are pretty frequent, but recently I got a call that kind of pricked my ears, and it's been festering in my brain ever since. Normally, I never answer a call if I don't know the number. If it's important, they'll leave a voicemail. But I don't know what happened. I guess I was bored that day. I answered the phone from this private number, and all I heard was a woman, maybe aged 40 to 50, speaking Spanish very quickly and quietly. Not quite a whisper, but I'd say public library volume. Well, I live in the state of Texas, so I know rudimentary Spanish, but not enough to hold a conversation. Well, I asked her a few times, "I'm sorry, what are you saying?" And she would pause for me to finish my question and then answer in Spanish. "Do you speak English?" And she would answer in Spanish again very quickly. In the end, I finally said, "En Inglés, por favor." She went silent for a few beats and then whispered to the point that I could barely hear her. She almost pleaded, "Be careful out there, mijo." Then the line went dead. Has anyone ever heard of something like this happening? It's been bugging me forever. I just want to know. Case notes, file number 298. So my first thought is, were you able to trace the number? I know it said it was private, and the fact that they didn't hang up means that they did want to talk to you, or talk to anyone. Be careful out there, mijo. So she did understand English. I wonder if this was just some entity, maybe a ghost. We know they can communicate through phones. I wonder what their intent or goal was. Maybe just to warn you of something. I'll reiterate the advice this entity or maybe person gave you. Be careful out there, mijo. Bonus file. Written by Dot Matrix Graphics. A subtle repair job from his beloved father. Hello everyone. So, I lost my dad in May this year, and as you can imagine, it's been a tough one. Tough for everyone in one way or another with what's going on in the world. My mom always asked my dad to come back and let us know he's okay over the years, and he promised he would. But sadly, not as we thought he would. Hopefully there'll be a time yet. His death came very unexpected, to be honest. From being ignored by the doctors to the point of needing an ambulance because he got so bad from a year until the last week he was here. We called him an ambulance because he was not good at all, and within 13 days in a hospital, he passed away from a brain tumor. My mom spent his last 32 hours by his side until the time came. A priest came into the room and asked my mom if he could bless my dad. My mom responded that she had fallen out with God right now because he didn't listen to her prayers. The priest said he can understand that, but said he can say a prayer for him. At this point, my dad's breathing was very erratic and he was struggling. So my dad's sister arrived and witnessed this standing outside from the door. This was one of his many brothers and sisters that were all there now. The priest said a prayer while holding a cross on his forehead, and within seconds, my dad's breathing changed dramatically and he opened his eyes and took his last breath while looking at my mom. I mention this because it seemed very spiritual, like everything at that right time, and the prayer helped him in some way. I don't know really, but it was very strong. The paranormal part. About 17 years ago, my parents were watching this antique show and this woman took this antique singing bird in a cage. They're housed in brass cages with fine detailing inside, along with a clockwork singing bird decorated with feathers. They're very complicated pieces of history and date back to the early 1900s, I believe. My mom saw it and was like, "Oh my god, I want one. That's so beautiful." And my dad was like, "Yeah, that's so unique." Later in the week, my dad was whispering to me to try and find one as a gift, so I looked around in all the usual places. Sadly, the rebuilt ones that fully functioned were very expensive, and I came across one that needed some work, and since they're like an old watch inside, I told my dad to go for this one, and we'll repair it, since it was in good shape. So he did. We never got around to repairing it. When you twisted the wonder, the bird just tried to move and never made any song, until something told my mom a couple months ago to just try it. And lo and behold, it not only decided to work, it was flapping its wings and twisting its head and fully singing a song like it had been repaired properly. So all this time, my dad was promising to get this fixed. Did he finally keep his promise and send a message for my mom to go and try it? There's been other things too, like my mom saying her hair was being played with while trying to sleep, and the feeling that someone is behind her. But the freakiest thing over the past couple years is when my dad's symptoms started. He bent down one day to light the fire, and he went really bad. Said he couldn't see and had all these flashing lights. Later in the year, about 2 months, he was getting worse, so he had to call an ambulance. 2 years ago, they did an MRI scan and said he was just having a middle brain balance issue. Roll on the virus lockdown, the first one. I noticed he wasn't sleeping anymore. He would act strange at times, and I just thought he was tired. But then his balance started to go, and he'd get migraines every day. Now, this kinda ties in with the events in the house, because when this all started 2 years ago, he said he was sleeping well, etc. But this one night, he felt a full-on hand on his head, just above the forehead. He woke and said, "What's the matter, Teresa?" to my mom, and after he opened his eyes, there was nobody there, and it was only 4 a.m. Now left with the loss of my dad, it's got us believing either something was telling my dad something wasn't right, or they knew he was in pain and it was telling him. 4 weeks before he was admitted to the hospital, the fire alarm just randomly went off too, for no reason. It just fired off for about 20 seconds, and it just seemed so strange. Now we think it was a final warning of maybe the last time he could get help. Bonus file, written by Manabez, a presence in the closet that only her son can see. Hey everyone, I debated posting here, but it's worth a shot. My son is 10 months old and still sleeps in my room, but I have his clothes hanging up in a small closet in the bedroom, meant to be his. We bought this townhome back in summer, and I'll bring him to the closet with me in his bedroom to look for pajamas or an outfit for daycare. Every single time I bring him there, he looks into the darker part of the closet. We have sliding doors for this closet, and he smiles and laughs right away. His eyes literally followed something back and forth, just locked onto it. He doesn't do this in any other part of the house. At first I thought it could be one of the cubbies I have with a picture of a cartoon bear, but I realized he doesn't even look at that. Today, I tested it out again, and of course he smiled and giggled right away. He even put his head onto my chest like he was shy, and he only does that when one of my friends comes over or with someone he doesn't know too well. It honestly freaked me out. The other day, I showered in the bathroom that connects to my bedroom, which he sleeps in. I was getting ready after the shower, and I swear I heard something whisper my son's name. I went to check and saw nothing. My son was still asleep. What do you guys think? Is it a good spirit? Bad? Should I be worried? I'm pregnant with number 2 and wanted to move him to his own bedroom soon, but this is making me want to keep him with me.